Welcome to Last Turn. I'm Bart, and my handle is Driller.
And I'm Evan, or Magnus.
So on Last Turn, our goal is to help our listeners get better at Hearthstone. Evan and I have a long history of playing card games both casually and competitively, and we think that we can offer some insight into core competitive principles that go beyond just cards or matchup statistics. Ideally, we want to help you develop a deep understanding of the game that will give you an edge in an unknown environment, like right after a set comes out, or help you next level an established metagame with sick tech cards. So we want to introduce ourselves to you. So I'm Bart. I've been playing card games for about 15 years now. I started with Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually, I started playing with my co-host Evan.
Hey, what's up?
And then I transitioned to Magic shortly after playing Yu-Gi-Oh! For a while. Then eventually I started playing Hearthstone way later. I got into Hearthstone around Naxxramas, and I got serious about Hearthstone pretty recently, probably about 6 months ago. And you, Evan?
As you heard, my history is sort of similar. I started at the same time as Bart. And then also transitioned to Magic very shortly after. Played Magic pretty competitively, traveling large distances to big events and stuff like that during college, which was, like 2010-ish, 2008, 2012. And then since Hearthstone has come out, I've just loved it and really loved how much of an edge I had at Hearthstone because of my time playing Magic the Gathering. I think that playing Magic is something that gives both of us a lot of insight on this game.
Indeed.
One thing that Magic did before Hearthstone is it had a standard and a standard meta, and that's what we want to talk about today. Is the fresh new Hearthstone standard meta that we have. And the first thing we want to talk about are the decks that are the best, the Tier 1 decks. And why they're the Tier 1 decks. The first one I think of is probably also the one that surprised everyone the most, is the Rogue deck.
Oh, yeah.
The one that is the Quest. Caverns. Something about Caverns. It gives you Crystal Core. And I think that people are mostly, or at least what most surprised me, is actually how effective the reward from the Quest is. I knew that there'd be a way to sort of play a deck with a lot of minions, and a lot of the Brewmaster effects to return things to your hand to pull off the Quest. I just thought that the card would be too underwhelming, Crystal Core itself. And I was completely wrong about that. Just Core is suddenly a really good card just because of how powerful Crystal Core is.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way. That was the first one that I thought of, and definitely the most shocking. I thought it'd be possible to trigger. It's kind of, you imagine Shadow Stepping, Youthful Brewmaster, and those sorts of cards. I didn't think it would be as consistent, and once you got the reward, I figured it would be maybe mid-game and you'd be playing 5/5s anyway, but I didn't realize that you'd be playing, 1 mana 5/5 charge creatures. That's just really powerful.
Novice Engineer being as effective in the deck as it is.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Also, I didn't see happening. And then if patches hadn't already been obnoxious enough as a 1/1, this deck might be the absolute best deck for taking advantage of the patches interaction, where we had really been hoping things would go the opposite direction with Standard. And then another thing that I think people really didn't pick up on at all before they started playing with the cards a week ago was that the minions that the elementals make, the 1/2s, all have the same name. And how great that is for completing that quest. All the best Explore the Caverns, Crystal Core decks, all the Quest Rogue decks that are really good at using 2 Igneous Elemental. And that was definitely something nobody was thinking about prior to playing. But that's proven to be huge. Firefly itself has just been a huge card in Standard.
Absolutely. I think Firefly has had a lot of impact on a lot of decks, and I think we'll discuss that a little bit later. Yeah, I think the Quest Rogue deck is playing a very important role in the ladder. It's sort of setting the clock. In the last meta, Pirate Warrior was the big mean monster right out the gate, and that basically told you how fast your deck had to be. So your deck had to be doing something really broken in order to go past this sort of the schedule that the deck puts you on. And if you weren't doing something broken like playing Reno Jackson, you needed to be beating them very quickly. You needed to be winning fast.
Beat them at their own game.
Absolutely. So you need to race them.
Hard.
Yeah, Pirate Warrior is really difficult, and Quest Rogue's hard too. So there are definitely good aggro decks, and I think we'll discuss those too. But I definitely think that this is the deck that's setting the clock. Also, analogous to Pirate Warrior, it just has some unfair draws.
Yep.
So I saw
a double Shadow Step.
Yeah. Give me a break. I saw a screenshot on Reddit today of some guy who had the quest reward in his hand and 1 mana crystal.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Did he also have the prep?
I think he did have a prep in his hand, and he drew into one or something. Yeah, it's unreal. He got one.
2 crystal core.
I think he was facing a rogue, and he swashburglared a prep and had a prep in his hand. So.
Swashburger.
Yeah, this guy is a hero. So what other decks did you have in mind?
There's definitely some kind of mage deck as tier 1. I don't know if it would be the aggro mage or if it would be the quest mage, or if it's freeze mage. But something with mage, ice block, and 2 arcanologist. I'm pretty sure is equally as competitive with rogue, because it's really the only way to get around crystal core is to not be able to lose for a few turns.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing else is really durable enough. That's the thing about Quest Rogue, is after they play their crystal core and they have 2 or 3 5/5s on the board, dealing with them doesn't matter. They're gonna play 10 damage and charge on the next turn. So there's really not many boards that actually stop them from just getting there with their minions, because so many of them have charge. And so one of the few ways to have more turns to win with something that has a later schedule is with Ice Block.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with you. That was the next thing I had down as well. I think that Freeze Mage is really good. We've been playing probably a really similar list.
Yep.
I got my list from you, so I imagine it's similar. And it's been very powerful. So things like cards like Frost Nova and Blizzard have been really instrumental in just eking out those extra turns, getting the last few mana crystals you need to sort of burn your opponent to death. Rogue is nice because it's such a linear, non-interactive deck that when you deal damage to it, it's really just permanent damage. So
yes.
I've had a lot of games as Freeze Mage where I just beat them down with Arcanologist and Medivh's Valet and get them to 17 when they stumble on their draws early. Obviously, those are very lucky games, but they just really don't have any recourse for dealing with any kind of interaction. They're really trying to play solitaire and beat you in solitaire.
Yeah, and the fact that they're not going to be able to heal means you can really just commit to your math. If I Frost Nova and do this much damage this turn, and then Blizzard next turn and do one more ping, I'll have lethal the turn after that. You can make that kind of play a lot more effectively than, let's say, against Druid or Priest or Warrior.
Or Warrior.
You can't really do that against any of those classes.
Absolutely.
So that actually is a really, really nice advantage you have in that matchup. And so that's a big strike in favor of some Mage Ice Block deck being tier 1, that it can have an edge over the other tier 1 deck. And Frost Nova and Blizzard are just another few of the 2 cards that are actually good against the Rogue Hero or the Rogue Quest, because they ignore how big their minions are and how many of them there are. And there's very few cards that actually do that.
Yeah, it's been really nice. One sort of hidden advantage in that particular matchup is that occasionally they'll just pump out a full board and you can Frost Nova them, and that's like time walking them.
Yes,
that's the best thing they can do is just attack you and then hero power. You just take 1. That's free. So that's been good, and I've also found that the mage deck has been good in most other matchups. I've been having a little trouble with some of the warrior decks, and also Amara Priest. You really kind of have to hope they stumble or misplay really badly.
Yeah, that is not a card you're really going to beat.
Yep.
Unless you get really lucky off of your glyphs and get a bunch of 0-cost cards to go with Antonitis.
Yeah, absolutely.
19 fireballs or something like that.
There's not many classes that can beat 19 fireballs.
Nope.
So
I think that was done intentionally.
I think so too. So another deck I have here is Aggro Hunter.
Yes.
So I think
Hunter's definitely strong.
Hunter's very strong right now. I think that this is the big mean aggro deck. The sort of more standard familiar aggro strategy as opposed to something like Westroke. The deck is really strong, and they got an absolutely bonkers 2-drop in Crackling Razor Maw. That card is just so good.
Thing's insane.
I know. It's just Adapt is like, it's not quite drawing a card, but it gets pretty close. And if you had like a 2-mana 3/2 that drew you a card, it's like King's Elec, but like really good.
Yes, it has immediate impact.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
It's King's Elec is great because it's just like a 2-for-1 some percentage of the time. But this thing can immediately clear something, or it can immediately give you like resilience. Like the fact that he can give your really cheap minions the Death Rattle, summon 2 1/1s.
Oh yeah,
is like preposterous.
On like Alley Cat. Oh.
Yeah, or Alley Cat. Like, it's so unreal. Or like giving one of the Alley Cats poisonous can also be insane value.
Totally. Oh yeah.
Plus, you get the 3/2 beast. It's a beast also.
Yeah.
So
it's just a fine, acceptable card to play on curve. It's a 3/2, and that'll beat them down eventually.
And Hunter just got so many good 1-cost minions between last set and this set that are all beasts that you can pretty much guarantee that your Crackling Razor Maw is actually 2-drop, and it will have a target on the second turn.
Absolutely. I mean,
which is definitely not a given in a lot of other classes.
Totally. Jeweled Macaw is obviously very powerful. Fiery Bat has always been good. I think Alley Cat had sort of an unfortunate story in that it came out in Mean Streets and just Hunter was so bad in Mean Streets that it just never saw any play. But it itself is a very good card.
It's a great card.
Yeah.
I love Alley Cat.
Oh, it's super good.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of folds to turn 1 as Zoth's first mate, but we're not seeing a whole lot of that anymore.
Even though I would say Pirate Warrior is still a good deck, it could be tier 1 or tier 2.
I also think it's a good deck. I haven't seen very much of it, but I've been hearing whispers that people are having success with it in High Legend.
I think, there's definitely people want to play with the new cards. People don't want to play the same old deck.
Especially not Pirate Warrior.
Yeah, you can expect that people won't be playing that deck, so you don't need to plan for it too much, which is good. But I'm certain it's strong right now still. Yeah,
I think so too. So do you? What else is on your list?
I actually have been seeing a lot, and I'm not certain it's tier 1 or not, but I have actually saw a lot of it lately, both playing myself and then looking at streamers. I saw like 4 different people all playing different variations on this one Paladin deck. It's basically, it's like they looked at what's the 3-mana 1/4 Stonehill Defender?
Right. Yeah.
And they were like, so you have a much higher rate of discovering a class card. And if you have multiple class cards, that's an even better chance you'll get one of them. What are the taunt minions in Paladin? Liquor Flame Burn Bristle. There's Tyrion Fordring, and there's also that new 3/7.
Yep.
Which are all insanely good.
Absolutely.
Like Burn Bristle is actually really, really great in this meta, because even the combo decks are usually comboing with minions.
Right.
So like the rogue deck, or if you call, or like Pirate Warrior, obviously an Arcanite Reaper needing to get through a Burn Bristle set feels pretty good. If you're the one with Burn Bristle. That 3/7 is good. You basically just play it when you're going to make a bunch of 1/1s, and then you get a bunch of 3/3s and screw them over. So it's basically running the premise that Stonehill Defender is insane in Paladin, and then it just plays like the grindiest cards. Let me pull up my list, but it has Tyrion. I saw multiple of these, so there's some differences. But they all have Tyrion. They all have at least one of the new 6-mana spell.
Spiker
Steed.
Steed.
Yeah, I can't see how you play less than 2 of those.
Sludge Belcher?
I'd play 4, potentially.
I mean, I had that arena deck with 3 of them.
Yeah, which was like 9 and something,
It was
right?
9 and 3. It was really gross.
So that card is also really big. Let's see what else is in here. So, Alley Peacekeeper, Equality and Wild Power Master, Doomsayer, True Silver Champion, of course.
Sure.
So, big one is Hydrologist.
Oh, that card's nice.
Just another 2-for-1, just another great way to be winning the long game, because you're getting value, or to be winning the short game, because you're going to get a 2-mana 2/2, and you're going to get a 1-mana spell that could potentially be like the 2/1 guy.
Noble Sacrifice.
Noble Sacrifice. I almost said Noble Hierarch. It's also 1 mana.
Indeed.
And a Paladin card.
And more expensive.
Yes. So Hydrologist, it's basically the deck came to be from looking at Hydrologist and Stonehill Defender and being like, look at how much value this is, and look at how good it is against aggro decks. So this is both really good in the long game and really good in the short game. Where do we go from here? And then the answer was, well, Hydrologist is a Murloc, so if we just add in some beasts and some dragons, we just get even more value. So I saw Dog was running a deck with 2 Twilight Drakes. I saw someone running just a singleton Primordial Drake. I'm doing 1 Twilight Drake and 1 Primordial Drake. Primordial Drake is insane.
That card's really strong.
I definitely would have been doing 2 Primordial Drakes, but I have Tyrion and Ragnaros already. So you don't want that many cards that cost 8.
Of course.
But I have the 1 Primordial Drake, the 1 Twilight Drake, and then for beasts, there's a bunch of good ones. The first one I was running, I saw Dog, he was using 2 Stampeding Kodo. Stampeding Kodo is actually really good right now.
So what are good targets for it?
Pretty much anything in the Warrior Taunt deck, like Tar Creeper.
That's true.
The 2/6, people are playing tons of Tar Creepery kind of things. If you play against Mage, they're going to probably have 2/3s, either 2 to 4 2/3s in their deck. Stampeding Kodo can eat those. You can also eat Doomsayer, so lots of decks are playing Doomsayer.
That's definitely really strong.
So when your opponent does Frost over Doomsayer, you can Stampeding Kodo. And against Warrior, you can snag just random pirates. Against Rogue, you can also just snag random minions. And you have Valor Peacekeeper. It's really good against Priest. Actually, I knew there was a class that's insane against Priest. Gets destroyed by this card.
Oh yeah, that has such little attackers. That deck.
And that's how they win. They'll play like a Northshire Cleric and then make it, a 1/10 and give it 10 attack. But they play it and give it, +0/+2, and then you Kodo.
Right.
And that it's actually enormous. Oh, and they have the 2-mana 2/3 that is really important to their deck, the elemental that makes their spells cheaper.
Right.
This also stomps on that.
They also have a 2/6 taunt for 4 mana. I mean, I don't know if the combo deck is running that, but the Death Rattle variant sure does.
Also gets that guy. So Stampeding Kodo has actually been really good, but I wound up taking it out because I saw someone else, Savages, also playing this deck, and they were using a card I really liked, Light Fused Stegodon.
Interesting. Why don't you tell us what that one does?
This is a 4-mana 3/4 in Paladin, and it's a beast. And when it has Battle Cry, adapt your Silver Hand Recruit.
Oh man, I had that guy in Arena. He is nasty.
Yes, so that's one of my beasts.
Oh man, I had a Vine Cleaver, the weapon that summons Silverhand recruits, and I had that guy, and I gave all my Silverhand recruits poison, and this is an Arena.
Holy crap!
I won handily.
Well, if it makes you feel better, this deck also has a Vine Cleaver in it.
That makes me feel really good.
Having a 3rd True Silver Champion is great. And it's just we've been talking about how this deck is just trying to get huge value. And this is a monstrous value card. People aren't really playing Acidic Swamp Ooze anymore. they're either playing South Sea deck hand or just nothing that destroys weapons.
Sure.
So this and this will immediately give you the 2/1/1s at least. And I'm also playing 2 Lost in the Jungle, which is the 1 mana spell in Paladin that gives you 2 1/1 Silverhand recruits.
That's pretty sweet.
So you basically, that's your Alley Cat.
Right.
That's your, Pirate Patches. That's your way to have cards to tango at the beginning of the game. And then late game, if you have 5 mana, then you can Lost in the Jungle and play the Stegodon. If you have 7 mana, you can Hero Power, Lost in Jungle, Stegodon. None of those are that expensive.
Sure.
So you can always squeeze 1 mana in to get way, way more value out of your Stegodon.
Right.
And you get your Stegodon relatively often because, like I said, this is all about why are we playing the Curator. So we have Vine Cleaver and Lost Jungle to go with the Light 2 Stegodon. Another card that goes with Lost in the Jungle and the general strategy of the deck, Nesting Rock.
Yeah, I've faced down that guy a bunch of times now, and I was like a little surprised first time I saw it. I couldn't really believe it, but the card's good. 4/7 taunts, like that'll get there.
Exactly, and it's a beast.
Uh-huh.
And once again, if I'm just playing the deck, I should have 2 other minions. But if I'm having trouble, if I can just get my hands on a Lost in the Jungle, I can 6 mana, 4/7 taunt with 2/1/1s.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I have 1 mana out, because I'm playing Paladin, I can Hero Power and play this guy.
Yeah, so that's something interesting about Paladin. Those sorts of cards that depend on you having other minions are a lot better in Paladin because of their hero power, because Paladin can just always have random guys laying around, right? So, Spike Ridge Steed, for example, which it's an aura, and, auras come with the typical danger in Hearthstone that they do in any other game, where you could just get 2 for 1 so easily. Steed is a little resistant to that because it dies into a 2/6 taunt, and that's like a card. But
if you have nothing to play it on,
yeah, it can be really dead. But luckily, Paladin's sort of a little resilient to that because they can pretty much always squeeze in 2 mana somewhere. They're gonna have a guy. They also have Lost in the Jungle, which gives 2 guys. It's just they got the dudes to cast this thing,
and that makes this card a lot better. And also, to just say something else about this card. It's a 5 mana 4/7. That's really good. That's really good.
Those are good rates.
That's great. This thing would gobble up an Azure Drake and still be a 4/3. So if you can't pull it off and you're beating your opponent down, and turn 5 you want to play a card, and you have this in your hand, play your 4/7.
Yeah, I mean that'll slam the game right in your favor.
And then turn 6, play a Spike Ridge Steed on it. See if your opponent can get out of that one. They probably can't.
No, most likely not. That's pretty filthy. So
those are. Oh wait, what were you gonna say?
No, I was going to move on to another deck, but if you have more to say about the Paladin deck, we can keep going.
There's one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the Spike Ridge Steeds. And we're generating cards, we're drawing cards. We have a Dirty Rat to sort of get the priest minion or get the rogues combo guy. Dirty Rat's just another really if you plan on playing the long game, having that kind of card is really good.
Oh yeah.
Everybody's running the 6 mana legendary, the 3/7. But I don't own one. But ultimately, after you smacked everything around, you also have an Ivory Knight, and you can generate another card and recover even more health, and lay on hands. So you just never run out of health. You never run out of taunt minions, and then you eventually just win.
Yeah, that's something really powerful that Paladin has access to. Actually, a lot of classes do now, which are just cantrips. So I think the rogue deck that we saw at the end of last season was a good example of how powerful cantrips can be. So that deck just had a bunch of cards that got other cards, Finjo, which put cards on the board, and it had the Swashbucklers, and those sorts of effects are just really powerful, right? So keeping your hand full of really whatever, pretty much anything, is good in Hearthstone. If you ever played a game of Arena, it often comes down to whoever sticks their random guy last and just beats down with it.
Yeah.
And that could be true of a lot of constructed games, too. Obviously, it doesn't always come down to that, and, a lot of decks have well-defined endgames, but just having a random removal spell or a random creature can be really good. And Stonehill Defender gives you access to not just a random creature, but a premium creature.
Yeah, discovering off it is so good.
Oh, it's so good. That card's insane. And Hydrologist gives you access to a secret, and the Paladin secrets are like a little tricky. They're a little hard to play, but for 1 mana they can be a really good deal. And then of course Ivory Knight's great.
Ivory Knight's great, and just one of the secrets happens to always just combo with Hydrologist, which is Getaway Kodo.
Oh, totally.
Like that, like it's like a combo with itself, so that makes the card so much easier to play.
Yeah, that's really great. It's also nice to have a card that's both a 2-drop and a 3-drop.
Yes, that's also cute. It's like Dark Peddler. It's just like Dark Peddler, which is also just such a good card.
Oh yeah, totally, absolutely.
So I think the last tier 1 deck is the combo Priest deck.
Huh? Yeah. So tell me about that one.
It's sort of mostly trying to win with Inner Fire. So you stick a minion, you make its health big, Divine Spirit it, Inner Fire, kill your opponent. But it's a lot deeper than that. One really important thing is the minion Radiant Elemental, the one that makes your spells cost less.
Sure.
And Shadow Visions, the card that lets you discover a spell in your deck. Those 2 cards are what made this deck matter now. Because if you play a Radiant Elemental and you have like a Northshire Cleric out and your opponent doesn't kill them and you have a Shadow Visions for the next turn, you can play a lot of stuff from your deck. You'll pay 1 for the Shadow Visions, and if you get a 1 mana card, it's going to be 0. And if it's so there's Binding Heal, which is going to restore 5 health to a minion and to your hero. So if you discover that, that'll cost 0, and then you can use it to draw a card with your Northshire Cleric. And so you basically just keep playing cantrips. So like how we're talking about cantrips are so good right now.
Sure.
But then you hit maybe a Circle of Healing, and you draw even more cards. And then playing the Divine Spirit Inner Fire combo, which is normally 3 mana, is only 1 mana.
That's very powerful.
So you basically, at any moment, are capable of just exploding and playing a ton of minions, drawing a ton of cards, and giving something that was, you have a lot of really solid dorks right now too, particularly Cabal Talon Priest. So if you have your Northshire Cleric, your Cabal Talon Priest, your Auchenai Soul Priest just lives, all of a sudden its health gets pumped and then doubled, and then you get killed with 14 damage out of nowhere.
That's great. So I'm happy to hear that Radiant Elemental is seeing play in the deck, because I saw that card, and obviously everybody thinks Sorcerer's Apprentice when they see the card, except it's a 2/3, and that's really good, because Sorc Apprentice, you want that to live. You're not looking for that to get in 3 damage and then die or trade with something. You want that to sort of exist on the board for the entire game, and Radiant Elemental as a 2/3 can live like another turn.
Yes, and so like. I mean, you can turn to Radiant Elemental, and then your Power Word Shield costs 0 mana, and then you can Power Word Shield it.
Yeah, that's great.
Like, once you wind up casting Radiant Elemental with all these spells in your deck, you see, like, holy crap. Like, this is ridiculous. So the other part of it is playing Wild Pyromancer. Now all of your many 1-mana spells not only going to draw you a ton of cards with your Northshire Cleric, but they're going to wipe your opponent's board.
That's really powerful.
So all of the strategies that are using a crowd of minions, of which there are many, there's an aggro druid strategy that's becoming popular. There's rogue, obviously. There's hunter. There's pirate warrior. You can almost guarantee, if you have the pyromancer, that turn 3 you're going to kill everything they have.
So does that deck run Lyra?
That it also has... So that's the end game. If you don't play against the aggro deck and you don't just crush them with Wild Pyromancer and Potion of Madness, you also have Potion of Madness, 2 Shadow Word Pain, you just really bring the hurt for the aggro decks. But then ultimately, if you get to the long game, yes, you have Lyra or Lyra, and Lyra plus Radiant Elemental means you're going to get a ridiculous amount of cards.
Oh, that's very powerful.
You just save up a couple of cards that normally cost 1 or 2, and you play Lyra Radiant Elemental, and then you just play so many spells. And if you hadn't had what you needed to Divine Spirit Inner Fire combo before, you probably do now.
That seems really strong. It seems like a hard deck to beat.
And the other card, the other endgame card is Elise. Just there's an Elise in there just to give you that extra longevity.
Yeah, that pleases me. I think that card was a big question mark when it was released. So everybody can imagine how such a thing is powerful, right? Because there's just this lottery ticket in your deck. But cards like that, they range from doing very little, from being their sort of, face, whatever's on the face of the card, which is 5 mana, 5/5, to doing something really powerful, which is, drawing maybe 5 cards later in the game. So it pleases me to hear that card is seeing play in some of the decks that are capable of going for a long game.
Yeah, this deck would be pretty happy with it just as something that makes their deck bigger, and is a 5/5 body that can give you this value later. It's very happy paying 5 for 5/5, but if you have the right draw, your Circle of Healing, Pyromancer, Northshire combo might draw your deck really fast, and you might actually hit that booster pack really fast.
So is that booster pack a spell?
It's a 2-mana spell.
Oh, Shadow Visions.
It could be 1-mana spell. Oh my god! Oh my lord! I did not notice that.
That's gross.
Dude! I didn't realize that. Okay, if there was any doubt that this is a tier 1 deck.
It has now been dispelled. That is gross.
Now I need to craft an Elise. So apparently there's this amazing combo in this deck.
That's awesome. That's so deep. Yeah, I mean, Shadow Vision seemed like a really insane card. When I saw it spoiled, I was thinking of the Reno decks at the time. A Singleton deck can really benefit from casting one of his cards twice. And Shadow Visions lets you do that, but it's neat to hear that it's seeing play outside of that kind of deck, because it does seem like a powerful effect.
It's so good, because if you have your Inner Fire in your hand, that's less in your deck, it's less likely you'll get that, it's more likely you'll get the Divine Spirit.
Yeah, that's really great.
And vice versa. It's exactly what you wanted for this combo deck, is extra copies of the card you're missing. Like, if you have the one, you can use this to pull the other one.
That's neat. It's like a tutor effect. That's they probably thought a lot about making this sort of card, and they were probably kind of scared to make this card.
Well, luckily they didn't make the copy of the spell cost 2 less. That's stupid. If you had a card that did that would be ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I mean, this card's in your deck, though. Glyph's obviously disgusting.
Yeah. But you can't use it to do degenerate combo stuff, like only play ice blocks and just get 4 ice blocks every game.
I mean, you do anyway, but...
Yeah, true.
Only sometimes.
And also you have Acolyte of Pain, just another thing that, next to Pyromancer and a bunch of spells, you're going to draw a million cards.
Yeah, that's interesting. That seems like one of those decks that maybe has that first world problem that your hand is too large.
It doesn't have it too much because so much of the deck is so inexpensive.
I see.
So much of the deck winds up costing 0 when you have any of those 2-mana guys. If you go on with Lyra, or if you're too good at playing the Seal, the Shadow Visions. If you're too good at playing Shadow Visions with the booster pack in your deck, then I could see you having hand problems.
Yeah.
But I think really it would really only be the booster pack that might give you that first world problem.
Yeah, I remember when I was playing Quest Mage for a little while, I had that issue with Kabbalist Tome, and I think a lot of people were talking about that. Is you're playing like a freeze deck, so you just have a million cards in your hand, you don't want to play any of them, and you need to cast spells that weren't in your deck, and Kabbalist Tome is like the fastest way to do that, but it's so hard to cast.
Yep.
And that was something I found very frustrating about that deck. But it's nice to hear that this deck doesn't have it. It sounds really fun. I thought it was like a lot more linear and less fun than you made it sound. So I might have to give that one a shot.
It's something else. It's really intricate. And I've seen people start to adapt slightly slower versions that have one of my favorite new cards, which is Free from Amber.
Oh wow.
And like a Singleton Dragonfire potion.
Sure.
And there's probably also a version, just now that I mentioned those two cards, it would probably be really cute to run Medivh with those cards. Free from Amber with an Atiesh is probably pretty hard to beat.
Oh my god, that sounds really Gross.
And Atiyesh with Dragonfire Potion is obviously insane.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Dragonfire Potion's a card that got a lot better.
Yes.
And I think we'll probably discuss that in a little bit. So I guess that was the last tier 1 deck that you had in mind. So I don't have anything written down that I'm really sure is a tier 1 deck. I have a lot of decks written down. But I think that
those I would all say a fair shot at being tier 1.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we definitely hit the most powerful strategies. I do want to mention the Quest Warrior. So
yes. This deck is also potentially tier 1, actually. That deck's really good.
It's very strong. So I think that I've been seeing it at its best because I've been playing Freeze Mage so much, and Warriors just traditionally always had a good matchup against Freeze Mage. Turns out when you have like 45 health, it's really hard to burn you.
Yep.
So
Supplies.
So this is an interesting deck that can present a very, very slow, very inevitable clock by beating you down with 2 power, 3 power minions, and it will eventually get there. But the real strength lies in the warrior hero power. So this deck is set up really well to just never be attacked by your 2-3 minions if you're playing Freeze Mage or if you're another aggro deck. They'll just sort of stonewall all of your minions.
Or Stonehill them.
Or Stonehill them. I mean, turns out that's just the best card ever. But they also have this quest. It's a quest deck, and they're capable of getting Ragnaros' ability as their hero power, which is a very strong endgame. So it's not infinitely powerful. It's better against decks that play fewer minions, and it's not really an auto win or anything like that. But if you're trying to outgrind somebody, doing 8 damage to a random target's a great way to grind them out.
Yeah, that's very tough to beat.
It's hard to beat that, and the deck is just filled with very strong minions as is. So I've seen a little bit of Ornery Direhorn running around, and I've had some success with that card myself playing this deck. Dirty Rat.
Good.
Dirty Rat is just so good right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many people are playing really greedy, combo-oriented decks that really kind of want to cast their minions and get the value off the battle cry, or it's required for them to do that. And Dirty Rat can just really screw up. Playing Freeze Mage, they might take out your Alexstrasza, or they'll take out your Antonidas and then kill it with Execute or something. It's just
Arcanologist.
Yeah, or they'll just pull down an Arcanologist and that's your ice block, and now it's gone.
That's a bummer.
Your valet is upset now because it can't go off. So it's really.
Or they could get your valet.
Well, yeah, or they could get the valet. And your 2/3 has very little to say to their 2/6 taunt. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty strong deck, and because it's a deck that's based on playing a lot of taunt minions, it sort of has automatic resilience to aggro, but it also has that late game strength that Warrior is really known for and has historically had. It's nice to see that. I was afraid that when Justicar was gone, we would stop seeing control Warriors, but it looks like we do have a long game Warrior deck here.
Yeah, it's Ragsticar.
Yeah, basically, who needs Justicar when you can just become Ragnaros?
Just an 8 damage turn.
Yeah, it turns out that's a lot better than 4 armor. It's a sweet deck. I really like it, and I think it's very strong.
And I think that I'm certain it's really strong. One thing that I don't think people were running at first, but they're running now is Brawl. Because of, obviously it's a really strong card in its own, but you were just talking about when is a Ragnaros hero power bad? When they go wide. When is Brawl amazing?
When they go wide. Absolutely.
So you either beat them with the Ragnaros hero power because they play one idiot a turn, but they'll realize that they have to commit to the board, and then you crush them with Brawl.
Yeah.
Or with the dragon that deals 2 to everything, people are using Sleep with the Fishes.
Yeah, I've seen Sleep with the Fishes. That really surprised me, but that card is very powerful because the deck is also running Ravaging Ghouls and Whirlwinds.
Yep.
So it's very
And
strong.
the dragon. It actually works with the dragon too.
Yeah, the dragon's really nice. So that makes because Curator is sort of an obvious inclusion. There's a bunch of really good beasts in Angoro in general, and Direhorn Hatchling and Ornery Direhorn are both fine beasts with taunt. They fit right into your strategy. Curator is very happy if it can pull out either of those and this gigantic Drake that's gonna deal 2 to the entire board. You don't even need to really pull out a Murloc at all.
Yeah, and I don't know if there are any with taunt anyway.
I don't think there's any that this deck wants. There's maybe the one that deals 2 to everything, but you have a taunt dragon that does that. You just,
Yes.
Yeah, you just don't need that. So I think that that's another really strong deck worth mentioning. And I mean, there's some other sort of runner-up, some maybe consolation prize to things like Discard Zoo or or Quest Priest, which I think is strong, or maybe even Quest Shaman or Elemental Shaman.
One cool thing about Elemental Shaman is that is the legend. I think the legend is really Kalimos. If you're gonna want to play Shaman and Elementals, like that's the card.
Oh, he's the Invocation guy, right?
Yeah, because you get to pick the Invocation, so it's almost like 8 mana win the game. Yeah. It's like 8 mana in Kazakis, and then play it. Like make the spell and then play it immediately. Also, you get a 7/7.
Yeah, I've had Kalimos come down and heal 12 against my burn strategy. Just click concede, move on to the next game.
Yeah, he can be the Reno, or he can be the Wrath effect on Kazakis, so he's great.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the definitely prevalent decks at the high ranks is that the Taunt Warrior quest deck, and so then I think that's one of the reasons why people really like this Paladin deck, is that you can go wide for free. The Paladin hero power, not only does it beat the regular Warrior hero power, it actually, interestingly, like, kind of beats the Ragnaros hero power.
Oh yeah, that's true. Definitely makes it a lot worse.
And so just, like, going wide like that is a way that you actually do have a long game. Like, you know, the long game of the Quest Warrior sounds so good. Why play this Paladin deck? You know, Tyrion is good, but, you know, it's not Ragnaros every turn.
Yeah, right.
You can actually basically counter the Ragnaros every turn, you know, by playing your hero power. And I mentioned I have that 1 mana card that makes the 2/1/1s, like stuff like that. When you're playing against the Quest Warrior deck, you just save that for when they play their quest weapon, and then you just spread out a bunch of insignificant guys and continue to get there.
It does seem very strong. So why don't we move on and talk about some of the decks that we expected to succeed but didn't quite get there. How do you feel about moving on to that?
Sounds good to me.
So the first thing I have on the list, I think, is like the elephant in the room, maybe even literally. It's the 1-mana Hunter deck.
Yeah.
So I think when that card was spoiled, you know, Reddit exploded. There was a lot of threads about how, 1-mana Hunter is going to be broken, we're going to be back in the pirate meta, and then threads coming up like you guys are overestimating this card. It turns out it's the first deck I tried to play. You know, like as soon as I could rip open my packs, I did that, cashed in on my dust from Sylvanas, etc., and made that deck, and then just like lost a bunch of games.
No.
Yeah, it's sort of sad. I mean, I tried, you know, really greedy variants, I tried stampeding variants, I tried sort of more mid-rangey variants, and it's not the most powerful endgame to play infinite 3/2s. So, you know, that's sort of in the same vein as the Warlock quest. It's strong, but a lot of decks are just inherently resilient to that kind of strategy in the late game. They're either stopping your minions from attacking, or they're playing a bunch of taunting creatures that can just slow that down a lot, or they're just beating you, you know, like Quest Rogue. So yeah. I think that, and also, you know, the 1-mana Hunter game, like those cards just have absolutely nothing to say about 2/6 taunts, or 2/4 taunts, and there's just a lot of this, or 1/4 taunts, or 3/5
I was gonna say 1/4 taunts.
Yeah.
Like, that card is devastating against some of these aggressive strategies. Plus, they get another taunt.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so
you just
many
gotta
good
concede.
yeah, right. Absolutely. As soon as you see Stonehill Thunder, yeah, I mean that is an impactful card.
But there's also the Tar guy.
Tar Creeper?
Yeah, just another thing that's gonna, you know, if your strategy is to play idiots, they gotta be really good.
Oh yeah.
They ideally all of them are 5/5s for 1 mana.
Right, exactly. They're 5/5 Stone Tuskboars. That's pretty much how you're gonna play idiots and win.
And when that's like, so like you can complete a quest. Would you rather complete a quest that gives you a bunch of 3/2s or a quest that gives you a bunch of 5/5s?
Yeah,
what's better?
Yeah, it's tough. It's just like maybe in the future it'll be better. Maybe not. But right now it's just not the strongest thing you can be doing. So what else were you thinking of?
I think that the priest deck, the Death Rattle Priest, is like doing way worse than people were expecting.
Yeah, I have that on my list too. I think it's still good, and I think it's still a deck, but I was expecting it to be like a dominant force.
Yeah, I didn't think that there would be any other priest decks. I think Dragon Priest might be better than the Death Rattle deck.
That's pretty unbelievable considering Azure Drake is gone.
Everybody and just the Grand Tournament is gone.
Right.
Or not just Blackrock Mountain, the dragon set.
Yeah, absolutely.
The set with all the dragons in it, and yet it turns out Draconid Operative is just that good. He was carrying the mountain, not the other way around.
Oh yeah, that card's insane.
Or at least that's my interpretation of Dragon Priest still being as good as it is without Blackrock Mountain. It's not that it needs Blackrock Mountain; it's that it needs Draconid Operative. And Netherspite Historian is just inherently better in a deck that has like Northshire Cleric.
Right.
But yeah, just Priest. It basically is the complete opposite of what I expected. And I think another deck that people were expecting to be strong is just like aggro shaman, just like base shaman. Like I think that people were thinking elementals would mostly be a gimmick, and it could be cool, and people would like for it to be good. But just playing Jade Lightnings and Lightning Bolts and Lava Bursts and Faceless, playing with Facelesses would be the way to go with shaman. At least that's what I assumed. And I have not seen any of that.
Yeah, I mean that's
actually
a good thing.
A lot of really creative decks in Shaman seem to be really, really good.
Yeah. So I think the rotation hit Shaman pretty hard.
Yeah, Totem Golem.
I know, I'm rip, seriously. And the 1/3, the Trog, isn't that gone too?
Yeah, the whole thing that made aggro Shaman good disappeared.
Yeah, I mean I think that's really big.
It is.
And
and I underestimated how big that was.
Yeah, I played more aggro shaman than I think anybody should ever play. Those are really the cards that carry the deck. You're trying to secure the game and just like put it way out of your opponent's reach in the first few turns, and it really relied on all of those cards that rotated. So I wasn't really too concerned about aggro shaman, but I mean, hey, 4 mana 7/7's good. It's a good rate. That can get there, but I guess it can't, and elementals can.
The strategies I've been seeing that work in Shaman are also more combo. Like I saw Dog playing a Doomhammer combo deck, and it's just like because they got Volcano, so he's using 2 Maelstrom Portal, 2 Lightning Storm, 2 Volcano, and a Devolve. And you play Acolyte of Pain, which is really good with Volcano. It just gives Volcano a draw 3 effect. And you eventually draw Doomhammer into Rockbiter weapons and play some Lava Bursts and kill them.
Yep, sounds about right.
And that was doing pretty well. And he was using 2 Hot Spring Guardian, which I really like that card.
I think it's very good.
Especially in current meta where you talk about how good a 2/4 taunt can be.
Oh, yeah.
And 2 Fireflies and a Kalimos. And those are all the elementals in his deck. But just having he could reliably play Kalimos when he had to. You play the Firefly and get the 1/2 elemental in your hand, you just hang on to it. Or maybe you play the Hot Spring Guardian, then the next turn you draw Kalimos and you can play it. So I thought that was cool. And I saw another sort of Shaman control. It used Eye of Black Paw, Jade Lightnings, Jade Claws, no Jade Spirits. It played the White Eyes.
That's a good
played Anatide Totems and the 5/5 Taunt. And it played 2 Fireflies, 2 Hot Spring Guardians, and a Kalimos.
The package, I guess we found it.
Yeah, it's just sort of like an elemental package in Shaman, and then Lightning Storms, just all like sort of the good mid-range Shaman cards from last season, and it's just a little bit slower, and it doesn't have Tunnel Trogs and Totem Golems in it, so it couldn't be fast even if it wanted to.
Sure, absolutely. That's neat though. I mean, it seems like I was worried that Shaman might just not see any play, which I mean maybe the community would be happy about that. But it seems like they definitely have a different strategy that they can play around with. You just named several, and I think that the elemental package, if you go heavy on it or you go light on it, is strong, because there are several sort of good ones, both at neutral and in class specific, for Shaman.
Yeah, and the Shaman gets the 2-drop. That makes their elementals cost less.
Oh, the Harbinger, yeah, that's a good card, Harbinger.
Because some of the elementals, I think I might have even talked about this a different night, are like below curve. Like you don't want to pay 5 for a 4/5, and discover an elemental, and you don't want to pay 4 for a 3/3 that deals 2.
Right.
But this card in Shaman means you can play a Chillwind Yeti and pay 4 for your 4/5. It means you can pay 3 for your 3/3 that deals 2 damage. So it can make the rate good. Similarly, there's also, I don't know how strong it is, but I saw an Elemental Paladin deck using the same logic with the hand pumping cards.
Sure.
So like your 3/5 Taunt Divine Shield is actually a 4/6 Taunt Divine Shield. It can impact a bunch of the elemental cards. Igneous Elemental gives you 2 1/2s.
Right.
And then pump both of them.
Firefly. So. Yeah, that's pretty powerful. That's good synergy where you can just fill your hand up with dorks that become bigger when you smugglers run them. That's nice.
And you can discover Ragnaros if you're playing Paladin.
Yeah, I mean, discovering Rags is good.
One thing I was trying to build is a control shaman with Stonehill Defender, of course.
Of course.
To discover Alakir the Windlord.
Wow.
And just get bonus Alakirs.
Yeah, that's pretty unbeatable.
And if you do think you want to do a control version of the Warlock quest, the Stonehill Defender can discover the 4-drop, the new 3/8 that discards 2 cards.
Yeah.
So you can do turn 3 Stonehill and to turn 4 that.
That's very strong.
But yeah, I'm really feeling like Stonehill is really strong, and people are starting to pick up on what it can do.
Yeah.
And I'm expecting more like sort of grindy control decks to start popping up that have 2 Stonehill Defenders in them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, and we can definitely discuss it later, but now's a fine time too. I think Stonehill Defender is very powerful. So I had initially brewed a Quest Warrior deck. That was one of the first decks I played after the Hunter deck. And I was playing Stonehill Defender in that deck, and Warrior has a lot of just random taunting guys, that aren't Tyrian Fordring. But it still felt very powerful. It was still something that I really wanted to play as fast as I possibly can because it let me fill out my curve. It was like I know a guy stapled to a taunter. It was just insane. And I'm very excited to hear that card is actually even better than I thought it was, because I thought it was insane, and it turns out that it's just like mega insane.
Yes, I think that you're a Stonehill hipster.
Yeah, totally. It's great. That card's really powerful, and I think we're gonna see a lot of Stonehill Defenders. Gonna be attacking a lot of 1/4 taunts in the future. So another deck I have here that we maybe expected to succeed but did not is and I think that this is still up in the air, but on day 1 the streamers were all about Quest Mage.
Yeah.
And I played, the Arcane Giant version, and then there's, of course, the Exodia version, which is trying to assemble the Sorcerer's Apprentice with the 4-mana card that copies them.
Molten Image?
Molten Image, yeah. I think that's what it's called. And then play Archmage Antonidas, and then any spell. And that lets them cast infinite fireballs, because they have, 4 Apprentice on board, and they're getting a 4-mana, 6 damage to face you. It's Exodia. You win. So that's one version.
Molten Reflection. Sorry.
Oh, I see. Molten Reflection. So there's another variant of that deck that is trying to make Arcane Golems, then copy them with Molten Reflection, and then use the extra turn to push through the last damage you need, and you have an Alexstrasza in the deck too. But I found that these decks, in order to jam all these combo pieces in there, they need to give up a lot of slots, and the deck doesn't really have any interaction. All of its interaction is it doesn't have fireballs necessarily. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think that that's a sign that maybe you're not playing the best mage deck.
Yeah.
But the decks turned out to be too fragile, and I mean, especially because Quest Warrior is so good. or just, warrior decks are so good. Both their armor and the fact that they're playing a taunt creature can really screw over the Arcane Giant version, and the other version, which has the combo that definitely gets past all that stuff, it's just hard to assemble all those cards in your hand and complete your quest, which demands that you're casting like Kabbalist Tomes or generating cards and putting them into your hand. That has that first world problem where it's really tough to get extra cards in your hand just because you have so much stuff that you just can't play until the turn you're going to win.
Yep, all the piece of Exodia, any duplicate secrets, and then also, I don't think anyone anticipated how much trouble Arcane Giant was going to have with taunt minions. I think people that played Freeze Mage or Combo Mage in the past, by the time you get to the end, you basically killed all their stuff.
Right.
Like, they're usually almost entirely out of stuff. Taunt Warrior never runs out of taunt minions.
No, it's got a lot of them.
Nobody knew that it just never ran out of taunt minions, and that every single turn they're going to play another one. But that's what happens. They just never stop. And I think that no one was used to that. I don't think people are used to, like the Dire Horn. Like, they don't run out of stuff. They actually just start playing gigantic taunt minions. They play a 6/9 taunt, and then they play a 4/8 taunt dragon that kills all your guys.
Yeah.
And the Dire Horn being a 6/9. Hello, Arcane Giant. All right.
So, regarding that card, there's one more interaction I want to mention. So, I completely misevaluated Dire Horn Hatchling when I saw it. I thought it was just like worse than ordinary Dire Horn, or maybe worse than other 5-mana taunt options. Turns out I'm very wrong. A lot of decks are running it, and it's very good. One reason why it's amazing is when you shuffle that 6/9 taunt into your deck, you can pull it out with Curator.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's that's really strong. Getting a 5-mana 6/9 taunt off of your Curator makes Curator really good. So, and you can pretty reliably set that up, right? Because Dire Horn costs 5 and Curator 7. So you can definitely sequence your turns and sequence the game such that you play your Dire Horn pretty close to your Curator and you don't accidentally draw your Dire Horn Matriarch. But if you do, there are definitely worse problems to have than drawing your 5-mana 6/9 taunt. When you don't expect to, early. That's fine.
Yeah, that's such a good deal.
Yeah.
That's almost the Priest Award 5-mana 8/8 taunt. They're pretty comparable.
Yeah, definitely. And Warrior's Life is already 40. So.
Yes.
It just gets there.
Warrior's been doing that for years. 40 life.
40 life? That's weak.
You break out your screenshot of having 100 armor, slap it on the table.
So, do you have any other decks in mind?
No.
Yeah, that's sort of all that I had as well. So I think that one thing we should talk about is rotation and bannings. So we lost some really significant cards. I wanted to start this discussion with, sort of a wake for Reno Jackson.
Let's have a moment of appreciating something valuable we own.
Yeah, absolutely.
A moment of silently appreciating one of our worldly possessions.
There's a lot of times where we were promised that we were going to be rich in the past, but no more. At least not in Standard. I think that card was... I think that card had obviously a major impact on the game. The fact that it was Standard legal. It was probably the most broken thing you could do.
Yeah.
But, it wasn't without cost. So... maybe some of the bad is that it warped the metagame. It definitely made all viable control decks be Reno decks, and then when Kazakus came out, that sort of restricted those decks to 3 classes. All 3 of those classes ended up having a viable deck, which is cool and great. I think that's awesome.
Unlike with hand pumping,
where
all 3 of the classes couldn't make a deck that worked with it.
Yeah, right. Or Jade, which kind of only had 2 decks.
Rogue Jade was not a thing. Rogue decided to go with Murlocs instead.
Yeah, right, or just Miracles. But Reno basically forced all control decks to kind of look the same, superficially. But one thing that's really cool is the way in which they look the same is they all have to be singleton, so they're actually really different. So that was something that I thought was super cool about Reno Jackson, is that it forced you to have a deck that was filled with 30 completely different cards. That is awesome. That's really exciting. If you've ever played Commander Elder Dragon Hierarch in Magic, you're playing a singleton deck in that format, and that creates a lot of really interesting and very different games, and your deck contains a lot of unique lines and a lot of interactions that, come together at somewhat unpredictable times across many games to make for a really deep and intricate play experience. And that's how I feel.
Yeah, and ultimately a lot of cards that would not have been played if it weren't for that restriction.
Absolutely.
The limitation forces you to be more creative.
Yeah, I think that that's ultimately a really good thing. So even though it had a very major impact on the metagame and maybe kind of forced control decks to be Reno decks, I think that the fact that the Reno decks made them so much more interesting and so unique, and tech decisions and brewing those decks are really awesome. It's just so fun. I love Reno decks, and I'm really going to miss that card.
Yeah, it was fun to get rewarded for doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was always just like a fun idea to just play a deck of all singletons. It's not a good idea. You shouldn't do it. There's no reason to. And it was really cool that they were able to design a card that properly rewarded that.
Yes.
Like they could have made a card that rewarded it in a completely different way. Not even, obviously, could have made something that didn't reward that thing, reward a different thing. But if you're going to reward that, it could have been, less health, or it could have been dealing damage. It could have not been a 4/6, but it just nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, they've successfully made that design probably once. They had other cards that paired so well with Reno that also had that requirement. They definitely made other ones like Raza and Kazakis.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, Kazakis also, the Reno rotation is also a Bran rotation, and that's kind of a hidden Kazakis nerf.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't appreciated at first.
Yeah, definitely.
I thought Kazakis decks might still be a thing without Reno, just because I played Kazakis so many times and felt like it was so strong. But you're right, he was standing on Bran's shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because playing him in the mid game to sort of wipe out your aggro opponent is strong. That's really good, and that's something you want to do pretty often. But I think that one of his key strengths is just getting 2 10-mana potions, because each one of those can potentially be the thing that will close out the game for you. And only being able to do that once is actually really huge, especially when you just don't have Reno in the deck.
Yeah, it's a big hit on your consistency, and then you have to sort of rely on it a lot more to buff your health and be defensive, where ultimately in the prior meta you could just be like either completely offensive with it or a mixture and still know you have Reno.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Reno just shut the door on a lot of decks, including Pirate Warrior. So that was one way to sort of get over the clock that Pirate Warrior and other, the aggro decks at the time put on you, is by just having Reno Jackson, which will just undo all of their work. So they're pushing so hard to end the game before you can cast Reno, and that's what a lot of games ended up being.
Yeah, the only maybe equivalent to Reno, like you could say maybe Priest has one in their quest reward.
Yes, yeah.
But it's certainly not the same. And if you wanted to play Kazakis and that card together, you're making a very difficult challenge for yourself.
Yeah,
now you need to play all those Death Rattle minions, but you can't use any duplicates.
Yeah,
that's not going to work.
No, there's almost
that's
no
going to
reason
be bad.
to do that. Yeah, you just shouldn't do that. But yeah, Reno rotating and Bran rotating are both really big hits to, an archetype. It removes an archetype from the game.
Bran rotating, I think, was a big hit on Jade Shaman. Bran Claws was just so strong.
Yeah.
Or Bran Water Speaker, to have that life gain against the aggro decks.
Sure.
I think losing Bran did a big hit on whether or not Jade Shaman was going to be a good strategy.
Yeah, so I think Bran was pretty versatile, and that is definitely a deck where it shined, because they have a lot of sort of cheap Jade generating stuff, and that pairs really well with Bran, who himself is a 2/4. It is easy to forget that.
Yeah, and he, that is a lot better when you're playing a deck with Flame Tongue Totem in it.
Yep.
And that's also the case with Jade Shamans. That's another reason why he's a considerable loss to that deck.
Absolutely. I haven't really seen... I think I saw maybe like one Jade deck, and it was like a Druid. I haven't really seen any Jades since the rotation.
I think I saw A decent J Druid doing something cute. I forget what it was. You can discover the 3/6 Mammoth Stonehill Defender.
That card's just the best card.
He is great. Maybe I should throw together a list like that right now.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
I didn't realize that till right now.
So what other cards did we lose from the rotation or the bannings?
Well, we lost Azure Drake.
I mean, okay, yeah, that's another card we need to really have a ceremony for.
Everybody draw a card and deal 1 more damage.
Yeah, please. That card's good. I mean, Azure Drake rotating is a curator nerf.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest things I noticed.
Yeah, same. When I was trying to brew. I was trying to brew and I'm just like, curator, yeah, it's like my favorite card. It's insane. You know, you play your 4/6 taunt, you draw 2 cards. That's broken. What dragon do I get? Drawing a blank for the first time. Because it used to just be the other way around. It's like, do I really just have to get Stampeding Kodo? Is that really the best thing? But like, there's so many beasts on Grow. You're like, oh my god, curator's gonna be broken. There's no Azure Drake.
You're right. They switcherooed us.
They did. They pulled the old switcheroo.
And they also got rid of Finley. If you want to talk about the curator, though, Paladin obviously got fucking love.
Oh yeah.
Curator love because of Hydrologist.
Yeah, curator, Paladin's in a good curator place right now. Yeah, so Azure Drake rotating is really big.
It did such a bad thing for deck building. Like, you just always have to use 2 of them. And I really didn't like the impact of Azure Drake on deck building. And so I'm really glad it's gone. I get to play Nesting Rock. I opened 2 golden Nesting Rocks.
Wow.
And I might actually get to play both of them.
Dude.
And that's because there's no Azure Drake around.
That's insane.
Getting to play with my golden Nesting Rocks as there's an Azure Drake. Burgly Bully was a card that like always seemed good to me. It sort of started showing up actually last season, and now it definitely matters more. You can do a ton of cute things with it, like the coins count toward the Mage Quest. There's a rogue deck that plays lots and lots of spells, like all the things that are the 1-mana Petals, and then it's Arcane Giant. So more spells for that is good too. Like more coins off of Burgly Bully. So there's a bunch of 5-drops that just get played now.
Isn't Burgly Bully a 6-drop?
Nope.
Oh wow. Oh.
I'm at a 4/6.
Oh, that's really good.
It's gas.
Oh, I didn't know that. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I would have known that if Azure Drake didn't exist.
Yeah, it's the Azure Drake made people ignorant.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a good thing it's gone. Yeah, so Azure Drake is gonna be, it's a big loss. I mean, pretty much all of the text on that card was really relevant, and that it was neutral, so it's relevant for just most decks. So, it kind of had to go. I do agree with you that it had sort of a toxic effect on deck building, in that if your deck was looking to play, 7 or 8 mana creatures, you just had to put 2 in there because it's so good.
It just keeps you in the game too well. You're almost always playing cards that deal damage.
Yeah.
So your opponent your opponent can't really ignore it. Like, the more aggressive they are, the less they can afford to ignore it generally.
Yeah. And it was like, it was really keeping Priest down. So Priest has some really insane answers. It has some very, very powerful things. Shadow Word Death, which is just always in their hand, and it always kills the thing that you need to live.
Yes.
And Dragonfire Potion. And neither of those things can deal with an opposing Azure Drake.
Shadow Word Pain. Just the Azure Drake. It's just like their blind spot.
It's completely their blind spot. They just have no way of dealing with it.
If Priest is holding a shotgun, Azure Drake is just like hanging out right between the 2 barrels. It's perfectly flat, perfectly 2-dimensional, and just completely untouchable. So that's definitely another deck that is kind of glad Azure Drake is gone.
Yeah, totally. I think that made Priest's answers, its sort of toolkit, a lot stronger.
Now Operative is undeniably the big bad 5-mana dragon.
Oh yeah.
No question about that.
Definitely. So I think that, Sylvanas and Ragnaros leaving, both of those cards are actually kind of in similar spots as Azure Drake in that they're just some of the most powerful things you can do at their mana cost, and that really constrains deck building. So they had said, the Blizzard said this when they were talking about removing Ragnaros. They said, instead of asking the question, is this really expensive minion good for my deck, you're asking yourself, is this really expensive minion better than Rags? And the answer is no, of course it's not. Rags is the best thing you could play.
Have you read this card?
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever cast Ragnaros? He even says Die Insect. It's definitely the best.
He says Die Insect, right? You're aware of this?
So I mean, those cards leaving does have a really big impact on control decks. Actually, it considerably weakens them and makes them definitely a lot less flexible in terms of the classes that can pull off those types of strategies. But it sort of reduces constraints on deck building, and that's ultimately good. You have a toxic game when you have many classes with many different strengths and they're all playing the same cards. And all Azure Drake, Sylvanas, Ragnaros, all three of these cards really contributed to that kind of toxicity. So in a way, it's a good thing they're gone, even though they're very powerful. Quest Priest would really like Sylvanas, probably also really like Ragnaros. But
Quest Priest wants Emperor Thorsan.
Oh my god, that's another one.
The individually banned cards, definitely big, but cards that combo decks wish they had.
Yeah, and there's a lot of combo right now, and Thorsan is just, oh my god.
I think that's one of the most notable things about New Standard is how much combo there is in spite of Emperor leaving. Every single combo deck, it seemed like it had to have Emperor. It felt like all the combo decks were gone when Emperor was leaving, and now it seems like there's so many more than there had been.
Yeah, it's really insane.
It's really interesting how much it just shows that Emperor Thorsan was a catalyst for a lot of the combos, or a lot of the best combos, and really needing a 6-mana minion in your combo probably means that it's not as good of a combo as these other things.
Right.
Playing a bunch of Stone Tusk Boars is a better strategy than something that requires a 6-mana minion.
Yeah.
So the fact that Emperor really just did help sometimes, but wasn't necessary. Freeze Mage is also really good right now. It definitely felt like it needed Emperor, but it clearly does not.
Yeah, speaking of decks that, speaking of card rotation, card removal, and decks I didn't expect to survive it, Freeze Mage also lost Ice Lance.
Yeah.
If you asked me, do you think Freeze Mage is going to be viable, I definitely just would have said no, and I would have put money on it. But it turns out that it's really powerful, and I've been playing it, and my record's really good with it. So it lost Thorsan, which is a card that makes that kind of assemble the piece of Exodia in your hand, or assemble just cards, some combination of cards that will win the game in your hand, and then cast them all as fast as you can. Thorsan makes that sort of strategy really good, and Ice Lance is a 1-mana spell, or a 0-mana spell if you play Thorsan. It does 4 damage. That's really very easy to make that a part of that whole combo. So, despite both of those cards leaving, there is still a valid Freeze Mage strategy, among other mage strategies, as we had mentioned, and I think that they're all really sort of on the back of Arcanologist.
And Glyph.
Oh yeah, Glyph is just, Glyph is so good.
Yeah, I think the addition of those cards is better.
Yeah.
They're more good than Emperor and Ice Lance had been.
Have you ever gotten a Glyph off of a Glyph?
Yes, and then I just sit on that until I play Archmage.
I know, it's so good.
And just can't come anywhere near losing. So, did you play Hearthstone when it came out? Because Frost Nova used to be 2 mana.
I started playing around Naxxramas.
So Frost Nova was 2 mana. Cone of Cold was 3 mana.
Oh my god.
And Blizzard was 5 mana. But now Frost Nova's 1 mana. And Cone of Cold is 2 and Blizzard 4. Ice Block is 1 mana.
How did they do that? Yeah, I know. Frostbolt's just free. Fireball is 2 mana, by the way.
Yes! Dude, power creep is a hell of a drug.
Seriously. Absolutely.
Have you gotten a Meteor off of Glyph yet?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Meteor's that card's good.
Oh my... God, polymorph feels so crappy compared to just blowing something into oblivion.
Oh yeah, I mean nothing's really living that. Meteor's probably a really insane card in Arena.
Yeah, and I bet if there were like a Reno mage deck, it would consider running one.
Absolutely.
But there definitely isn't.
Yeah, I mean, not in Standard. I think that Wild is busted wide open right now. There's a lot of stuff to do there. I haven't even began to explore it, so...
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of other cards we lost. Justicar is something that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, I think that... Maybe this isn't the metagame for Justicar, but in a different metagame, Justicar makes Control Warrior just that much harder to beat. It's one of those cards where I remember playing a lot of mid-range Shaman back in November, and I was one of those guys, and I would face off against it's a really good deck. Face off against Control Warrior, and you're just praying as hard as you can to the elements that they don't play Justicar on turn 6, and because if they do, it's just so hard to win. Oh my god, that card makes that deck very powerful. It gives it such a strong late game edge over other late game decks or mid range decks. So, that is a big loss. Even if it wouldn't see so much play in the current metagame, it's a really big loss.
It could have actually fit in these grindy paladin decks that like to evolve or adapt their Silverhand recruits.
That's a good point. Absolutely.
I have played Justicar in Control Paladin. It actually beats the Warrior improved hero power.
That's true.
Play Justicar. I'm gonna play Justicar. I'm exponential.
Paladin is just in the business of beating Warrior with his hero power.
That's all it's for. It's the only reason it exists.
Well, certainly.
Silverhand recruits don't even really want to do damage. They just want to break armor. But that's definitely another big one, or at least it could have been a big one. We'll never know.
Yeah. I think you mentioned this earlier. All of the dragon package in Blackrock Mountain, that's huge.
Yeah.
So
if anyone was thinking about maybe Ren Blackhand is gonna be good now that Sylvanas is gone and Rags is gone, sorry. Like that.
Nope. Yeah, it's the dragon package, obviously gave Priest a very strong deck. Another deck that survived off of cantrips, just playing cards that drew other cards. That sort of effect is very powerful, and it makes a deck that can do that a lot will tend to do well. It gave that deck a lot of late game staying power, and unfortunately, it apparently still works a little bit, but a lot of really important cards like Twilight Drake are just not here anymore.
Yeah, Twilight or Twilight Guardian.
Twilight Guardian, yeah. Twilight Drake is here. Yeah.
Guardian was because it was also Dragon itself. It was so especially good for those Dragon decks.
Oh yeah.
By both requiring being a card that requires Dragon, also being a Dragon itself is just such a compelling reason to play that deck, and then it also made playing the deck easier.
Absolutely.
Its loss is a huge reason not to play that deck. Hunter, as far as anything that isn't just one drops, but is sort of mid range or aggro, it lost Quick Shot.
Yeah, Quick Shot's really big.
And that was a really clutch spell, especially just for going over the top and getting past a bunch of top minions.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody's playing, and now they don't have that card.
Yeah, Quick Shot was really big. I mean, they got Grievous Fight, which I think is a good card, but not as good as I thought. I thought it'd be a lot better than it actually is.
Yeah, it would have to cost 1 mana. Everything is so fast.
Yes.
If you're gonna be clearing like that, you're probably playing against something that's so fast that paying 2 mana for that's not good enough.
Yeah.
Warlock lost both Demon Wrath and Imp Gang Boss.
Oof.
Which is a huge hit on its control game.
Oh yeah.
And that's also a big hit on its aggro game. But losing Imp Gang Boss sucks. That card's so good.
Yeah, Imp Gang Boss is a very powerful card. I mean, it still has a lot of tools in aggro. I've definitely faced off against Discard Zoo, and it's still doing all the same kind of standard stuff. But Imp Gang Boss is a very powerful card, and it will.
And Dark Peddler's also gone.
Yeah. Dank Peddler.
I'd say those were, and maybe are, the 2 best Warlock minions in the entire game. And they both left.
Flame Imp is pretty good, and so is Voidwalker.
I would instantly choose Dark Peddler or Imp Gang Boss over either of those. Those cards are good, but Imp Gang Boss is like it's the boss. It's like I think it's one of the best 3-mana cards in the game. It's like Ice Block. Ice Block's better.
Do you think it's better than Stonehill Defender?
It's good against Stonehill Defender.
It's true.
It might be better, but
the fact that it's close says something, though. Stonehill Defender is really good.
Stonehill Defender is also he's also the boss.
Oh yeah.
And then Dark Peddler is way better than Hydrologist, and completely nanners. And just an insane 2-mana minion. Though, you could argue that it was going to be a lot less good because you can't get power overwhelming with it anymore.
Oh yeah.
So, that's sort of why. I guess that's another thing that goes hand in hand with combo decks. People expecting them to be less prevalent. You're losing power overwhelming, even if you weren't already sad enough about losing Emperor for trying to do your Leroy Faceless Manipulator combo. You also lost power overwhelming, so that just crushed all of those hopes. But power overwhelming is also a really strong card for aggro, so that's definitely really impactful on Warlock. But not just the aggro deck, also the combo control deck can't really do what it used to do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, power overwhelming is really big, and yeah, it's a shame to lose that. That might also be very strong with there's that minion where you destroy a friendly minion to adapt twice.
That card is gas.
Yeah, I think it's a very strong card. And I think that'd be even stronger if power overwhelming was around.
Yes.
That reminds me a little bit of that 3-mana 3/3 that like eats the things on either side of it and gains their power and toughness.
Yeah, Void Gobbler.
Void Gobbler, yeah, something like that. Void Eater. I don't know. Whatever it does, like power overwhelming was just insane with that card, and this guy that adapts twice has sort of a similar synergy in that it's getting something out of killing a thing that's already going to die.
I personally am very sad about this. We lost Argent Horse Rider.
Oh yeah.
And Silent Knight. These are both 3-mana. Silent Knight I didn't really start playing until the end, but I really like both of them.
Yeah, so Silent Knight is a card that surprised me.
Yeah, and that was sort of surprising people, but like you play that 4-mana rogue card with it, give it +2/+2, give a stealth minion +2/+2. You just have this insane minion. I really wanted to play Silent Knight with the Paladin quest.
Oh yeah.
Perfect. You play a stealth minion that has Divine Shield. That's a great target for Blessing of Kings. That's a great target for Silvermoon Portal. But it rotated, so that's a bummer.
Yeah, totally.
But that's definitely not one of the biggest impact losses overall, but makes me sad.
Yeah, I mean, I think Horse Rider. Yeah, I agree with you on Horse Rider. I think that was like an interesting card that sort of filled an important role for a neutral minion. Like it wasn't overpowered, but it was still solid, and the decks that wanted it really wanted it. So it was it was a good recipient of things like Cold Blood, for example. That card being gone is unfortunate. Silent Knight, a really sleeper hit. I played it a couple times in Arena, and I really liked it. I thought it was very strong, very clearly strong there. The resilience offered by both stealth and Divine Shield. It's a fair amount of resilience. That card just is hard to kill it, hard to deal with it. And I am happy that it saw at least a little bit of constructed play in the last few weeks of Standard.
Mm.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I just was like so sure it was going to have a lot more oomph now, but that's just because I didn't realize it was rotating.
Yeah. So I think there's one topic that we should get on that I think is really deep and probably revisit this in the future, maybe even more than once.
Sure.
And that is this idea of aggro versus combo versus control, these three sort of general archetypes, and what we're seeing now on the ladder, how that differs in the past, from what we've seen in the past, maybe generally what these archetypes are, and what they mean in Hearthstone, and how you should think about those sorts of things when evaluating a new metagame or just queuing up for games in a known metagame. So why don't you, Evan, why don't you tell us what these three archetypes are?
So one thing to note is that there's a lot of different ways to categorize decks. Like, another term you may have heard is mid-range, or a fatigue deck. There's more than just these three headings, but I think the saying something is a mid-range deck or saying something is a fatigue deck is a different way to break things up.
Sure.
One way to divide all decks into three categories is this aggro control combo, and any one of them could maybe be mid-range or something depending on what kind of other cards you use. But an aggro deck is going to be playing minions and dealing damage as quickly as it can, and really just using your opponent's lack of readiness for how much you're putting out to win the game. It's not going to necessarily play a bunch of cards that have high card advantage value. It might even play cards that seem kind of bad, but as long as it puts your opponent on their back foot, it winds up paying off, and that allows you to win even against an opponent playing really strong cards. You don't give them the opportunity to use their cards to their maximum value. And you do that by playing minions, and if you have the ability, maybe also pumping the minions. A control deck is going to mostly focus on not letting an aggro strategy win, play a lot of cards that stop minions, play a lot of cards that do get value and do get them extra cards, and then rather than many minions that are all very good, it'll probably play either not very many to maybe a medium amount of minions, and the minions will either serve specific functions, like in Mage you have Arcanologist to get your secrets to keep you alive longer, or finisher creature like Archmage Antonidas. Those are really the kinds of minions that you'll see in a control deck, as opposed to an aggro deck, which is the power and toughness, the health, the attack and the health are what you're looking at. And then a combo deck will have a specific set of cards that, when combined together, win the game. So aggro is really just trying to be fast and use your opponent's lack of readiness against them. Control deck is going to try and outvalue you and keep stopping what you do until you run out of stuff. And then when you are finally out of stuff, they can finally start playing their ways of winning. And then a combo deck might almost be largely ignoring what you're doing to quickly draw cards or assemble a certain situation, like the rogue combo deck with a quest. It's not so much that it needs specific cards in its hand, but it has to fulfill these specific requirements. And it's not going to be focusing on stopping you from doing what you're doing. It's not going to necessarily need a bunch of value. It just needs to pull off this specific set of cards that happen to be really amazing together.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely succinct. So definitely these are three different approaches to playing a game, and they're sort of taking advantage of different aspects of different cards and sort of leveraging, the strengths and synergy of various cards together to sort of put together a cohesive strategy. So, a card that's really good for aggro might be like nothing. It might be a 0 for a combo deck, and it might be a 0 for a control deck. But likewise, a card that's really good for a control deck might be 0 for aggro or combo. And combo usually has some wacky cards in it anyway that just don't do anything outside of the combo. So
that's a good way of looking at it. Is or considering this concept is now when you look at a card, rather than saying is this card good, is this card bad, you can say is this card good for aggro, is this card good for combo, is it good for control?
Absolutely.
And each one might, like what you're saying, they could have hugely different numbers.
Oh yeah, totally.
Hugely different values depending on which deck they're in.
Yeah, and I think that's so even if this is not the only or maybe even not the best way of breaking down different decks, it is a valid way to break down decks. It's sort of a tried and true way to break down decks. It's been in Magic forever, for at least as long as Magic's been around, and it's It's effective, and this can help you sort of look at different strategies and different cards. The control deck really needs removal spells, and it likes removal spells that gets at things, and cantrips. It really likes that stuff. Aggro turns out to really like cantrips so much. Maybe combo doesn't care so much about it, but these are three very important archetypes. So I think this is something we've alluded to earlier. On the ladder right now, there is an exceptionally high prevalence of combo.
Yes, there's so much more than usual.
There are so many decks that are just trying to put together their Exodia and just slam it in your face until you die. I mean, the Crystal Core Rogue is obviously the most heinous offender. It's the one that's maybe the most visible. But also, in a way, Freeze Mage is a combo deck. It's kind of a control deck, but ultimately it's trying to assemble a set of cards that's going to beat you. Then there's things like the Quest Mage deck that is just a straight-up combo deck that does not care what you do as long as it can play its cards. It doesn't really care at all what you do.
And the fact that Freeze Mage and the Quest Mage both play cards like Frost Nova, Blizzard, and Ice Block, all three of those cards pretty much always say whatever it is you're doing, it doesn't matter. You maybe have a Tyrian Forgery, maybe you have an Ancient of War, maybe you have a bunch of 1/1 Whelps. It doesn't matter.
Nope.
All of them are irrelevant in the face of those cards.
Absolutely.
And that's really what makes those decks combo-like. They just have to get. It doesn't matter what you're doing. They just have to assemble their stuff, and that's it.
So this is. I think that this is really unprecedented. So we've seen combo decks in the past, or we've seen aggro or control decks that have a combo in them that is very strong and hard to beat. Bran Kazakis is one we talked about earlier.
Faceless Manipulator and Leroy Jenkins
and Power Overwhelming.
In Reno Lock. That's a great example of a combo sitting inside a control deck.
Absolutely. So we've seen these sorts of things before that are very powerful, and we've seen combo elements in control decks or even in aggro decks, but we have straight multiple dedicated combo decks. And I think the quests really enabled this. So
yeah, though to some extent not. Like I was expecting the Quest Priest to be the best priest deck, and I'm pretty sure one of the numerous different priest combo decks is actually the best priest deck.
Yeah, right, sure.
So that's really surprising to me. There's also, I mentioned Shaman. I was playing the Doomhammer combo deck, which is just another like this. Just almost every class has like a really valid combo deck. It's not just that the deck exists; it's that it's either the best or one of the best decks in that class.
This is very unusual, especially in the early of the season, the sort of beginning of the season. One thing I learned from sort of watching Magic tournaments and sort of competitive Magic high-level play is on the first week of a new standard format, when a new set comes out and some sets rotate, aggro just crushes everything. Because people are trying dumb stuff, they're trying to put together decks that aren't really viable, but they appear to have a strong strategy, and then other people are
to do these silly combos that could just never work, and they don't.
Exactly, they just don't, because they get attacked and they die. But it turns out in this format, people are doing those silly combos, but they're just running you over with 25 damage Stone Tusk Spores.
It's so much the opposite of what normally happens with these rotations, not just in Hearthstone, but also in pre-Hearthstone and Magic.
Yeah.
People, all these new silly cards come out, and people try to do new silly things with them, and they're bad for winning. And then the people that just play minions and attack beat all of them, and those are the best decks in the first week.
Yeah, for a little while.
And it's just the complete opposite. Everyone that tries the more ridiculous, more silly, more unlikely thing wins more and has an easier time running over people that are playing good cards and playing these aggro decks that seem so like the Hunter deck. Playing 8/8 that gives you a bunch of 3/2s that draw a card. That's good. And then you try that and you get run over by Molten Reflections.
Yeah, it's really silly. So I think that there's a lot of ways that we could discuss this. And one point that I wanted to make, which I think is really general, I think that the control gets hurt the most by this. So we haven't seen too many slow control decks. There's some combo decks that look like control decks, and then there's some aggro decks that go a little longer, like the warrior deck. Well, it's not really an aggro deck. I guess you can call it a mid-range or a control deck. It's somewhere in that sort of world, but it's not quite a control deck. But I think that control gets hit really hard because control wants to play a long game, and aggro presents a clock by doing consistent damage to you. Combo presents a clock with inevitability. Control is also using inevitability, but it's a different kind of inevitability. They're inevitably going to draw and play more cards than you will over the course of the game and just beat you by having done more things. Combo is inevitability because eventually they will play Exodia. They will just have Exodia in their hand and that'll be it.
Control's inevitability is that they'll eventually start doing a better thing than you every turn, and if you do something better than your opponent every turn for long enough, you beat them.
Right.
But if you start doing better things to your opponent, and then they do the best thing, and just win instantly, it doesn't matter that you did better the last few turns. It doesn't matter that you played some big elementals if your opponent does an Archmage combo.
Right. So I think that this hurts control a lot because the type of inevitability presented by combo it's not something you cannot value. And it's all or none. It's sudden. And I think that in a game like Magic, you can hold a counterspell for a combo. You can force of will part of their critical pieces.
You can cast duress.
You could thought seize them.
Pull the most dangerous card out of their hand, and also take a look at what they have to get an idea of what you have to play against.
Totally, or mental misstep or flusterstorm. There's just so many different ways you can interact with it. Hearthstone has none of that. So Hearthstone lacks that interaction directly with your opponent's hand or the instant speed interaction. So Dirty Rat is great. It's an amazing card because it's one of the only ways you can interact with your opponent's hand.
Actually, I think a better noun would be interruption. Is what Hearthstone doesn't have, because usually something like hand destruction is referred to as interruption in Magic the Gathering, and that's really, you don't have any way to and counterspells were originally called interrupts.
That's right, interrupts. Yeah.
And so that's really if you're gonna try and pick one word for what that thing that Magic has that Hearthstone doesn't, it's sort of that, or at least interruption of certain things, interruption of hand, and interruption of a combo.
Oh yeah.
Because combo is on my turn, I do these several things. And you can't do in Hearthstone, you can't do anything on their turn. So there's no interrupting a series of plays.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you have secrets, but those are very unreliable, and they're also you don't have any control over them. You can't just tell your counterspell to wait for the crystal core.
Exactly. There's so little control, and it's so easy for your opponent to know what you might have that could be relevant.
Of course.
The list of relevant things is so much shorter in this game than in Magic.
Totally.
That you can very reliably play some minions, then play a Crystal Core, then play more minions and attack with all of them in one turn. If you try to do that in Magic, they'll just counter the Crystal Core and let you do all the other stuff, which won't matter.
Right.
So there's a way to take, they're sort of making a house of cards that's very impressive, and it's indestructible, unless you can get in and interrupt them while they're building it.
Right.
Once they finish the house of cards, the game's over.
Yeah.
And in Hearthstone, they don't give you a way to be like, hold on a second, I'm actually going to take out that one critical card while you're in the midst of putting it together, and that'll save me this turn.
Yeah, it's certainly not a reliable one. I mean, I am a person who has resolved Counterspell on their Crystal Core, and it felt amazing, and I won the game.
That's awesome. I actually realized you can turn one Cabal Lackey and play Counterspell, and then you play that quest. They're gonna be really sad.
That's amazing.
But they can also tank and then coin.
Right.
Because they'll definitely have coin if you went first. Anyway, you can keep talking. Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's so there is So I think that the lack of instant speed interaction gives Control a lot of trouble in the current metagame, and I think it makes combo very strong. Luckily, none of maybe with the exception of Rogue, a lot of the combo decks are pretty slow, and they are susceptible to just being beaten to death by creatures.
Yes.
It's not like there's not really a straight one-to-one mapping between these sorts of relationships in Magic and in Hearthstone. It's just that some of the things hold true, many don't. Attacking with creatures is really, really good in Hearthstone, and it's like way worse in Magic, for example, because blocking. But the combo decks can sort of be aggressed and just beaten down until they're dead, before they can get their combo off. So it's not really an issue, but I do think that control gets kind of hosed here.
Yeah, as far as what's the plan? That's really how these the three archetypes differ. Is that when you ask them what's your plan, their answer is different.
Yeah.
And the plan that control has is really bad against the plan that combo has, assuming that you can't interrupt their combo.
Absolutely.
The only way that the control strategy of drawing a bunch of cards and having a bunch of stuff in your hand that you can work with and can be really effective, like having the most effective card for the moment, is if you have cards that have an effect.
Yeah, right.
And in Magic, you can play a control deck and draw counter spells and draw interruption, and you can accumulate some interruption and then interrupt your opponent's combo. But in Hearthstone, there's barely anything like that. So if you're playing control, you're still getting all of these cards. It's just that they're not going to actually stop your opponent's plan if they're playing a combo deck. But if you're playing aggro, your plan is still totally valid against both decks.
Absolutely. Yeah, just smash face until you win. Easy.
And combo's strategy is obviously at least valid, if not better, against both decks.
Yeah.
So control is the one of the three that sort of starts to limp. It's like if it's scissors and the rock just got a lot bigger.
Yeah. So Warrior is in a good position now as a deck that sort of closely resembles a control deck. Because
I would say that the Quest Warrior deck is a control deck.
Yeah, I think the best variants are certainly sort of shield block, shield slam type control decks, board wipes and stuff, brawling. Yeah. So it's I think that they're in an excellent position having access to one of the best. I mean, every class has access to Dirty Rat, but this class makes the best use of Dirty Rat, which is one of the very limited pieces of interruption in Hearthstone. And another thing that makes it important is it's like interruption your opponent can't really play around. So
yeah, it's really the only one.
Yeah,
this is the one interruption card in the game.
Yeah, I mean, there's
at least the only one that's not a secret.
Right, exactly. I mean, counterspell, you set it down, and then they test whether it's like an ice barrier, and then they play their coin or something. It's or their prep.
But yeah, that's interruption that they can interrupt isn't that's not what you want.
Right.
You need your interruption to work, and counterspell and spellbender are examples of interruption that your opponent can then interrupt. And that's way less good than something like Dirty Rat.
Oh yeah. So all of that said, I'm still trying my hardest to mana bind a Crystal Core.
It would be awesome.
I think it'd be a nice it'd be like a good screenshot, but I don't think it would actually be good for my strategy. I guess 5/5 Arcanologist is pretty awesome. But anyway, yeah. So I think that
that's your image.
Yeah.
Oh man, that would be a really good card.
Oh, that's a card. An Opus Engineer.
Yes, you're still playing those.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's
You are on fire.
I love that. So it's Control's in a bit of a tight bind right now, and I think that this. What were you going to say?
I think actually is what you're going to say about Warrior.
Yeah.
Is that Warrior is sort of the one class that can have an angle against the combo deck because it can build up that armor wall.
Yeah, and I think that's really
can
huge.
Sort of function as interruption.
Yeah, definitely. Because it could sort of, depending on the nature of the combo deck, it could sort of make some of their cards irrelevant if they're a spell-based combo deck, or it can just slow down the amount of time you have to win after you've assembled your combo, as in Rogue.
Yeah, some combo decks are trying to, like get you to 25 and then in one turn deal 25. Any deck that's trying to do that has a much harder game against a warrior.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that you're playing all these taunt minions also means that if their combo with something like with Leroy Jenkins, they're going to have an even harder time. So the taunting and all the armor actually does give you resilience to a lot of combos. Also, the Doomhammer combo, also much worse against a bunch of taunt minions. So Warrior has that innate strength against those kind of combo strategies, plus it also has this really sick inevitability against another control deck.
Yeah.
That's the thing that sells it to me, is that if you're going to play a control deck, you should probably, if you're not going to, pick the deck that beats every aggro deck and every combo deck, it should at least beat all the other control decks.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that Taunt Warrior might be sitting there, but it's also possible that this new Paladin control deck is like really, really good against it. I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
it's hard to say. Like we talked about the two hero powers like clash in a complicated way. That would probably mostly be up to skill who wins that matchup.
We could probably run that matchup against each other.
Maybe now.
Yeah, that'd be fun. So I think we talked about a lot of interesting stuff here today. I think this metagame is shaping out to be really interesting. I think there's a lot of, obviously very novel strategies with the quests and a lot of these very powerful cards. But we'll have to discuss the rest another time. This has already been pretty long. So
yeah, it's definitely a unique meta. A lot of different factors led to it being so much different from past metas and just being the opposite of a lot of people's expectations.
It's nice, though. I mean, I think that the designers...
Really fun.
Yeah, the designers of Hearthstone are very talented, and I think they're just getting better and better. So, Evan, where can we find you on social media?
I am Magnus57 on Facebook, so if you search Magnus57 or at Magnus_57 on Twitter. Someone stole the one without the underscore. Or on YouTube, just Magnus on YouTube. How about you, Bart?
So you can find me on Twitter. I'm Driller_HS. It's a relatively new account, and I'll be sort of populating that with interesting stuff later. As of now, I do not have a Twitch, but I may eventually begin streaming.
I don't post anything interesting. It's just garbage and memes.
Nice.
Pretty much my entire life.
I mean, me too. That's all of us, though. We're playing Hearthstone, right? Thanks for listening to Hero Power.
Yes. Join us again next turn for more Hero Power.